Here we are, ladies and gentlemen. We are on episode 10 of the Microsoft Unboxed podcast. I am your host today,
Double
Kareem
digits.
Anderson. I know we did it, and I'm joined by,
David Allen. Hope everybody's hanging well out there.
yeah, the two of us are back. It's been a while. We've had some conflicting things happen week after week, surprisingly, but hopefully we're back to a regular schedule. If not, then you guys stick with us because we are fun and entertaining. Maybe that's why you guys are back with us. Whatever the reason is, we got a lot of news to catch up on. We're not going to recap everything that's happened over the past couple weeks, but we'll at least do this week. And this week is full of headlines. We have a discussion about um, GeForce. We have actually a couple of headlines about GeForce we'll be discussing. We have some Surface Pro news as far as firmware for old devices, events for new devices. We'll also be talking about Android and Microsoft no longer working together on the Windows side of things. How Apple they came out with their M3 MacBook Airs, and how the word AI is becoming muddled these days, thanks to them. We'll also be ending our pod with actually a rather nuanced discussion about the future of gaming as far as Microsoft's concerned. There's been a new article or an interview that has gone live, and we're going to be here to discuss it. Would you like to let everybody know what we're jumping into as far as our first headline, please?
Well, yes, I would. I'm going to jump right into something from this week. We've kind of, as you mentioned, we've kind of got a little bit of a combination of a few things from last week and a couple of things from this week. I'm going to jump right into something about gaming. Everybody knows that I love the gaming aspect of what we do here at Microsoft Unboxed, and gaming is my thing. So, GeForce Now has been in the news 2 weeks in a row. Last week, they introduced quite a few more titles. They have made Call of Duty available on GeForce Now, and now the GeForce Now Daily Pass that we covered back late January, I believe it was. It was first announced that you could get 24 hours of priority or ultimate access, and the priority comes at $3.99, with the ultimate giving you everything: the 4K, the 120 FPS, or if you're on an ultra wide monitor, even the 240 FPS. And that's 24 hours. Jump in there, try it out. Um, they did say that the passes were limited each day. So I'm not real sure what that means. I think that may be a sales tactic. Maybe to keep themselves from being overloaded. Maybe that'll be their reasoning if you can't get in. Hey, we did say they were limited. So maybe that's how they're controlling the flow of day passes. But I have tried a day pass since they came out, just to get in there and get a taste of what full on GE Force now is like, and I will tell you, it has greatly improved from what I remember trying their beta that lasted what felt like 3 years a couple years ago. 4K, 120 FPS with the proper internet connection is totally possible, and it's totally cool. I gotta give them credit. This is a cool service.
Well, that's great. I don't have much to add to this story. I mean, I think you summed up all the details. I haven't had a chance to try yet, so when I do, maybe we'll circle back around and I can give my take on what that experience might be like for everybody, or for the average gamer themselves. I think these are the details for those of you who are watching. Just kind of reorienting what a priority day is and what an ultimate day is and what's included with those things. I think for the priority day, which is $3.99 each, you get priority access to premium servers, 6 hour session length, up to 1080p resolution, up to 60 frames per second with no ads. If you are a baller these days, you could shell out an extra $4. You get 8 hour sessions up to 4K resolution, up to 120 frames per second, again with no ads as well. and I think he had support for GeForce RTX 480 rigs. Again, cool thing. This will play in later to kind of what we were discussing as far
Yep.
as
That's
uh,
kind of why I
future
cut the
gaming.
discussion.
I guess we'll move on to our next headline, shall we?
Let's
Which
do it.
is less about gaming and still more about the future, though. Microsoft will be hosting or unveiling Surface Pro devices later on this month. Specifically, March 21st, I believe, is the date. We talked about it. Yeah, we talked about it last year. We said we kind of gave you a layout of what could potentially be happening as far as Surface devices, when those are going to come out. I think our buddy Zach Bowden over at Windows Central, I think it's like in December, talked about a two-tiered rollout. Then he came out with a exclusive. Some sources of his had started hinting more and more and gave a specific date. And then 2 days later, Microsoft just said, "Okay, screw it. If you guys are going to ruin everything, we'll just tell you it's official. It's happening. March 21st. We're going to be talking about Surface Pro 10, the Laptop 6, and I think what was missing from our previous stories was this new AI Explorer thing. It's a feature that's coming with, I believe, a version of Windows that should be released in the fall. I'm sure they're gonna tease it, have a sizzle reel, kind of go over the details of it. But what this thing is, and I think you and I joked about this in a chat, is that it's Windows 10's timeline on steroids, essentially. Well, what this thing will do is use AI, machine learning, and perhaps the newer processors that will be coming with these new devices. And we'll get into the details of that. I'll let you talk about the details of the devices to basically track everything that's done on your laptop. So, for you privacy nuts, maybe hold off on getting new devices. But for those of us who want to, you know, shift gears into the sixth gear and go forward in the future with Microsoft, this new AI Explorer is apparently going to be able to use leverage Windows Copilot, and you're going to be able to just use natural language prompts to ask about anything and everything that's ever happened or occurred on your device. And then, because it's pre-generative, it's going to, search throughout all those key commands and things that were mentioned, stroked on the device itself, to formulate and give you an answer. So if you were going to say like, hey, I was talking to David about Xbox gaming and the future of Xbox gaming, can you send me that Word document that we put together? It'll basically pull up that Word doc because it knows all the conversations you've had either via email, Teams, Skype, whatever other apps that it gets access to, specifically Office and Word, and it'll bring that up. I don't know how granular this thing is going to get, what kind of permissions it's going to have, what kind of APIs it's going to use to like latch into these things, or what kind of developer support it's going to get right off the bat. But I'm assuming that's going to be the goal. For those of you who are less interested in the AI version or the AI announcements of this March 21st date, I'll let David jump into the hardware.
Well, I think the hardware is going to be a very big deal this time around. We're kind of starting to see the shift of the ARM chips are, we've talked about them, we've discussed them. The ARM chips are here. The Qualcomm chips, they're debatable as to what people think of them. And my browser window just closed. Give me just 1 second, folks.
No problem. I will filibuster while you're doing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, as far as the devices are concerned, some of the specifics for the hardware is that, at least for the rollout, we're going to be getting commercial devices on the 21st. And what that means is that you're going to get devices that look very much, maybe almost identical to the Surface Pro 9 and the Surface Laptop 5, but that will have a bump in as far as the SoCs are concerned. So you will get a spec bump, but not a hardware redesign. And I believe those will be available in April, late April is what Zach and everyone's kind of leaning towards. So that's the lackluster part of the March 21st rollout, is that they're going to be doing commercial devices first with spec bumps, but they will also be mentioning these new devices with new designs, which consist of, I believe, a Surface Laptop 6 with a new OLED display with a thinner bezel profile, brighter nits, and support for more HDR content. The Surface Pro 10 will have a more rounded overall profile, even more rounded than I suppose what they have now, which would be interesting to see. Like you said, like David had mentioned, we're also getting the Snapdragon X Elite variant, which is the Qualcomm produced chip, as well as Intel Core Ultra devices. And both of those will have NPUs, which will help power this AI future that Microsoft's going to be building into its software later in the year. We're also going to be getting new haptic trackpads, I believe, for the Surface Laptop 6. I don't know if they're going to be doing it for the keyboard in the Surface touch type, yeah, touch keyboards. We're also going to be getting a dedicated Copilot key. I believe it's going to be on both. So you're going to be getting a new keyboard for the Surface Pro 10 with that new Copilot keyboard or key. We're also going to be getting built-in NFC readers. I believe that's going to be for the Surface Pro only. I don't know if they're going to have this for the Surface laptop. So presumably you can take your Surface and go buy stuff with it if you want it to be a weirdo. And beyond that, we're also be getting the same claims as we get every year: all-day battery life management, which I believe will probably be closer or more achievable with the Snapdragon X Elites. I know the Surface Pro X gets pretty decent battery life. We're probably seeing better ones with this new chipset. I believe that might be. Oh, we're also going to be getting an additional port. We're going to be going from one USB and one USB A to two USB Cs and one USB A, I believe, for the Surface Laptop 6. I'm not sure about the Surface Pro if it's going to regain its USB A port. Now that's the hardware. Like I said, the rollout is going to be commercial by April, and then another rollout in June, late June probably, for all the fancy new devices with the new chipsets and the new hardware redesigns. And then another rollout, a software rollout in the fall, I believe, which will activate or utilize all of these new chipsets. What do you think about this multi-tiered rollout and Microsoft kind of announcing it this early on?
Well, first of all, thank you for filling in for me there. Sorry, folks. Edge just decided no more browser for me
Hey, we're a team
and
effort here.
and closed the window. I think the three-tiered rollout is kind of something I personally expected. I know we kind of hinted at it a couple episodes ago that Microsoft had to get out in front of these new chips to make sure that they had their offering out there with the Qualcomm. Now, if we don't have the Qualcomm Snapdragon X Elite, I think this is, business as usual. We slide it on down to, late summer, early fall, and we start talking about it and we have our launch. But, we've got AI is really what's driving the ship right now. We're seeing these NPUs. We've heard NPUs talked about for the last 2 or 3 years, even on the Apple side of things, the neural engines, we've heard everybody discussing these NPUs. And then when was what the end of last year when Qualcomm came out with this Snapdragon Elite and said, "Look, we're going after Intel." I remember watching this press briefing online, and they made no bones about it. They're coming, and I think Microsoft had to get out in front of it. I think the three-tiered rollout is a little disappointing for the consumer. The consumers are still going to be waiting till I believe it is June, as you mentioned, to maybe get our hands on the consumer level device. But I think, businesses, April, May, will be able to get their hands on it and kind of see what it's about. My one concern about all this is like we mentioned in the chat early this week, you're putting it out now. The software comes later. So what you're asking that buyer to do is trust you. And you know, Microsoft, Apple, any of them, can we really trust what they're going to do once they get you to swipe the card? I mean, there's going to be enough people that are upset going, I don't know what this Snapdragon is. I don't know if I want it or not. I don't feel like we have educated consumers enough yet to say, yes, you need this Snapdragon processor. It's powerful, it's efficient, it can run your apps, it gives you good battery life. And I'm not saying that's what it's going to do, folks. I've not seen one in my hand yet. But remember, ARM doesn't have a great track record with Windows. There's something to overcome there. So you're asking the customer, business or consumer, to commit to the device, and you'll give them all the software goodies later. I think they'll sell a few here in the beginning. I think once they deliver the software goods, let's call it Q4, by the time they deliver the software goods, then you'll see where we're at with this whole AI thing, because I'm assuming the Copilot keys are going to be on the keyboards. This is going to be a consumer device that should be the start of what Microsoft envisioned the AI computing platform, I'm making that term up, to be. Do consumers love it, they hate it, or say, hey, don't need it? We're going to find out.
Yeah, I think Microsoft's doing their part. They're moving, relatively slowly speaking, as far as integrating the AI portions that they want. You remember, we're going to be seeing Copilot in Windows 10, I think later this year. I think they are testing a hover over effect with the Copilot currently in Windows 11 and bringing in a new Windows Studio Effects icon to allow people to kind of experience a little bit of these AI features, these machine learning aspects of Windows 11, which enhance your conferencing, your video and audio isolations and blur and filters, effects like that on devices now, so that when someone says, "Hey, I hear all this AI is going to be in these new devices," it's less about getting the device for those AI features and more about getting the device that offers the better versions of those features. So you already have it on your laptop, presumably, by after build or in June, before they announce, like, hey, here's the reason why you want to get this new Surface device is because it has a better screen, it has better battery life, and it has a processor that will make the AI features you've been playing with for the last couple of months even better. Versus saying, like, hey, here's a device in June and wait till November before you can actually use those features. I don't think that's what they're necessarily doing. I think they're trying to get these features in updates to regular Windows users, Windows 11 users particularly, and eventually Windows 10 users, so that again, when they say, "Hey, here's the new Surface Pro 10 with its rounded corners, thinner profile, thinner bezels, another port, and better battery life," people will say, "Hey, that's why I want the device." Oh, and guess what? It has a processor in here. Remember those Windows Duke effects you kind of play around with that are okay? They're even better now. We're going to be building more on those. Copilot's faster on this device. Same thing for the Surface Laptop 6. So I think perhaps that's what they're aiming for. We'll see if they execute it. Now, again, we talk about the future, the wishes and dreams of Microsoft. The reality is, it's a clunky fudge mess when they, they try to execute it. So we won't belabor this point anymore. We will move on to our next headline. Do you want to let everybody know what we're jumping into next, my friend?
Yes, I do. Let's see. Where did we go next? I'm going to stay on the Surface topic for just another minute. I think this is worth mentioning, really more maybe for the business folks out there. If you've got a Surface Pro 7, you will, as of February 28, 2024, you will no longer get firmware updates. Microsoft is, they're done with the firmware updates on the Surface Pro 7. Now, let me make something clear. I see this on Twitter, I see it on Threads, I see it in a lot of message boards.
This is your George W. Bush moment. Read my
Yeah,
lips.
yeah. This does not mean the Surface Pro 7 is unusable. What this means is
What? Wait. When firmware stops, the device doesn't just turn off. It doesn't just go black.
exactly. You know what they're telling you is you're not going to get the touchpad updates. The physical updates, the camera improvements. You may not get those. A keyboard improvement. You may not get those. You're still. Let me make this clear. You're still going to get Windows updates for whatever operating system you have on that Surface Pro 7 until the updates for that operating system run out. This drove me bananas when this came out because I'm not gonna call any websites out, but there were people on forums going, Microsoft has dropped the Surface Pro 7, and now I've got to get rid of it and buy a Surface Pro 8, 9, or you don't have to do that. They're just stopping the firmware updates. Keep using your devices, folks. Keep using them, please.
I'm gonna pull a Ron Burgundy here and say, I don't believe you. So we're gonna move on to our next topic. I'm just kidding. You're absolutely correct. Everybody, for those of you who even understand what a firmware update is, I presume you have gathered what David is saying as truth. In fact, for those of you who don't understand what a firmware update is, you probably don't like updates to begin with. So don't even worry about any of this conversation. Just go on using your device as normal. If you have any issues, reach out to Microsoft support. They will, point you to the right direction for the most part. They've been pretty decent on that. So, with that being said, we will be moving on to another thing that's ending, so to speak, and that is Microsoft's efforts with Android on Windows 11.
It was dead from the start. Okay, go ahead.
I mean, truer words have not been spoken on this podcast, my friend. You're right. We touted this. Microsoft featured it at the start or the release of Windows 11 back in 2021, I believe, at the time. And this was at least sold as a big deal. Like, hey, you are going to be able to, at some point in the future, get your Android apps on Windows 11 devices. And everybody was like, hey, that's great. I think it was, it was marketed towards consumers, but it was mostly a play towards developers to say, hey, this, not only are you going to be able to, develop your apps using, our various platforms, Android supported platforms, but you'll be able to test them out on this device all in one. It's kind of like the same way that Apple does theirs. We have to, get in their operating system and use that in order to test it on that same operating system. So Microsoft is saying, hey, we want Android developers on here. The problem with this was it was done in a very patchwork kind of way. The way it worked was you didn't get the Play Store, which was what everyone wanted. At least, as a consumer, that's what you thought you were being sold on. You're getting the Amazon App Store, which is an offshoot of Android, a specialized version of it. And you had to go and download an entire subsystem in order to activate it. Like, this wasn't something you would just go into. This wasn't mixed into the Microsoft Store, which would have made it easier for consumers to, get their Amazon apps, if that's even a thing for them. You had to go download a subsystem, which I believe was like a 2 gigabyte download or something like that. It took a couple steps to do. You had to be abreast of downloading that whole system. It didn't really work out because, one, the Amazon App Store, unless you're just trying to buy things, is really just made for the Kindle tablets, which are usually given to kids. And so there were a lot of kid apps. There weren't very many adult apps. There weren't many productivity apps that translated, or games that translated over. So again, not saying that anybody who uses the Amazon App Store routinely couldn't find anything. It's just that, a lot of people who use the Google Play Store, what is perceived as Android proper, were not getting the same things that they thought they were going to get. And so Microsoft, to its credit, updated the thing once a month, every month, basically, since it rolled it out. Now, the updates that it was getting didn't really amount to much, security and patches, things like that. But it is now ending that effort. And Microsoft, I believe Amazon also sent out an email. I got the same email that said, dear customers, we are writing to inform you about the changes to the availability of Amazon App Stores on Windows 11 starting March 6, 2024. Amazon App Store will no longer be available for download from the Microsoft Store on Windows 11 devices. After March 5th, 2025, Amazon App Store on Windows 11 and any apps downloaded from it will not be supported. For additional details and insights into this transition, please read our FAQ, which they offer. Despite this change, we want to assure you that the Amazon App Store will continue to be available and supported on Fire TV, Fire tablets, and Android devices. We appreciate and understanding and continued support as we work to enhance and evolve the Amazon App Store team. Microsoft sent out a similar notification, basically saying that anybody who's developing for it may want to stop doing that because none of that's going to be amounts to anything in the next year and a half or year, I guess. And that anybody who's looking to submit apps to that store probably shouldn't do that as well. So, as of earlier this week, it's effectively dead. You can still access it if for those of you who are still doing it, and maybe you want to use the Amazon version of TikTok, even though Microsoft had, the Microsoft Store already has one, or the Kindle version. Like most of the apps were already duplicated because Microsoft got access to them in the Microsoft Store. So there's no love lost there. It's unfortunate that this ended the way it did because Microsoft still couldn't get enough Android developers and it couldn't get the official access to the Google Play Store that it needed in order for this to amount to anything. Now, with that being said, and I'll let David jump in because I'm talking for a minute, you can still access Android apps depending on the device through the Phone Link app. So if you are a Samsung user
Where I was going.
and a Duo user, I believe, you can still get a mirrored version of your Android apps on there. Now, Pixel users, your SOL, obviously Apple app users, you probably have a disdain for Microsoft to begin with anyway. So Samsung users, though, you probably have a better bet using this because again, you had to download the subsystem for Windows and Windows on Android or Android on Windows 11. This way, you just plug in your phone and it pops right up. So, with that being said, David, take it away. What are your thoughts on this?
This is right where I wanted to jump in, my friend. I am just to give a 2-second background. I rely 125% on everything Phone Link can do. And I do use the Android apps on a daily basis. And, when I saw that we'll call it the Android store, the Amazon store, the support was ending for Windows, I really wasn't all that upset. One, Kareem hit the nail on the head. The apps in there were just not all that great. You didn't really see a whole lot of adult apps. There were some folks out there that tried the old side loading attempt to get access to the Google Play Store. And for those that knew how it would work, and,
Yeah,
like you
BlueStacks is
said,
still a thing.
yeah, like you said, it was a little hard to set this integration up to begin with. It was never the point and click approach I think people, were expecting it to be. But back to Phone Link, that is the way to use your Android apps. It integrates into Windows beautifully. You open up Phone Link, you click apps at the top, it will show you a list of apps on your phone. As Kareem mentioned, it's mainly for Samsung phones or the Surface phones for the 5 people out there that still have them. Um, Start the app, it will behave like a regular Windows app. It goes down in your taskbar. You can resize it. You can maximize it. You can use your mouse to interact with the app. You can type in text boxes. It's really cool, really useful integration. If I had two pieces of advice for those that haven't tried it, one, you really need a current phone. The performance is a little slow. Two, when it's running, your phone is kind of taken over by the integration app, the link to Windows that's running on your phone. You will see like a landing screen that says this device is being used for remote access. I forget the exact wording, but it's something along those lines. So if you're picking up your phone to use it while you're using these, you will see some disconnects. I think that's to be expected though. So keep that in mind. I don't think you're going to sit down, use your phone regularly, and launch these apps in and out back and forth. So what I tend to do, if I need an Android app, put my phone down, use the Android app, close it. When I need the next one, launch it, use it, close it. That way, I'm not going back between my phone being a phone and my phone being attached for the Android app, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's been interesting to see because I think this is less about playing an Android game on your PC or things like that. This was mainly used for
Absolutely.
having access to specific messaging apps that were only built originally for Android. Your messengers and your WhatsApps and your, uh, you know, maybe if you were commenting on Reddit or YouTube or something like that. But Microsoft's done a pretty decent job of getting most of those on there. There's still no official YouTube app, but you can make a YouTube app via the Edge browser or Chrome, I believe. You can make it as a full-fledged app that sits in the taskbar and has notifications. So the idea of using specific Android apps on your Windows device that can't be accessed or replicated in the browser, I believe is becoming a smaller thing, which is probably another reason why maintaining this level of development probably just wasn't enough for Microsoft. Hopefully, these Android developers within Windows find another job somewhere else. I don't want to hear about layoffs with this team. I want to see them move on. Microsoft is also promising tighter integration with Windows and Android in the future. I'm sure they'll talk about it again in March. Samsung's, obviously working with them constantly about, integrating more things. So perhaps they, pivot this team into whatever these new Android slash Windows experiences will be in the future, especially if they are catering towards AI. We will move on to our next topic, shall we? And I believe uh, it was supposed to be this one. I think we talked about GeForce Now, but if you want to talk about the Battle.net, I think that was at the top of the list of things you had as far as your
That
headline.
is correct. I need to jump in. I've got one more GeForce now, folks, for the gamers out there. And this was last week, but I think this is still very much worth mentioning because it's a big deal. GeForce Now has been short that one big group of titles that gamers look for. You guessed it, the Battle.net, the Call of Duties, the Star Wars, the Overwatches, the Diablos. Well, guess what? By the time you're watching or listening to this podcast, you can get on GeForce Now and play your Call of Duty, your Diablos, your Overwatches, etc. The Battle.net catalog is there, and I don't think it's a coincidence that the day passes came out just a few days after this was announced. Because Call of Duty, we all know the story with the Activision Blizzard Microsoft deal, is one of the most popular franchises out there. We're waiting for it to hit Game Pass. It is now on GeForce Now. When it came to GeForce Now, I mentioned to my buddy Kareem here, could this be the opening of the door to finally see this franchise drop on Game Pass? I think it is. I've seen this on several podcasts mentioned already 2 or 3 times. People are waiting like money in a bucket for Call of Duty to hit Game Pass. This is the start. You can play it. I have played it. It works on GeForce Now. It works well. This is kind of going to lead us to a story we're going to talk about here in just a minute. I think Kareem has got one more headline to go through, but for you Battle.net fans, go get you some on GeForce Now. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, I won't keep them waiting too long. I just have a bit of a rant. If you guys want to sit back, buckle up, you Apple haters, come join me. You Apple
I'm
lovers,
here.
you may want to fast forward 5 or 6 minutes. We're going to be talking about Apple targeting Windows PCs with AI marketing for Macs. Now, I wrote this headline. I will admit it's a bit clickbaity because they're not targeting specific Windows users. This is all, they're all playing the game of PC computing. So, I mean, personal computing. So they're going after whoever's going to use the device. But because Microsoft has been the one of the most prominent businesses using AI as is in their marketing as a way to leverage certain things. Google's right up there with them, so they're essentially Apple's targeting Google. I chose to use the Microsoft angle. The targeting Windows PC users, especially now that we know that there's going to be an event in March or the end of this month that we'll be talking about new devices, new Windows PC devices that'll be leveraging AI in new and inventive ways for the operating system. When And I say this in regards to Apple's release of the MacBook Air M3 powered devices, specifically. They had a blog post up. They released the whole devices in a very digital way. It was like, hey, here's a press release. There's no events because there's not much to talk about. I mean, they are more powerful devices than the M2s. But there was no hardware changes. They just put in a new powerful chip and then kind of shipped it out. The reason why this part of their blog post caught my attention was because it had to deal with AI. What they said was in their blog post, it said, with the transition to Apple Silicon, every Mac is a great platform for AI. The M3 includes a faster, more efficient 16 core neural engine, along with accelerators in the CPU and GPU to boost on device machine learning, making MacBook Air the world's best consumer laptop for AI. Bold claim. Leveraging this incredible AI performance, macOS delivers intelligent features that enhance productivity and creativity so users can enable powerful camera features, real time speech to text, translation, text predictions, visual understanding, accessibility features, and much more. In addition to on device performance, MacBook Air supports cloud based solutions, enabling users to run powerful productivity and creative apps that tap into the power of AI, such as Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365, Canva, and Adobe Firefly. Uh, the reason why I take umbrage somewhat to these claims is that Apple hasn't, they have famously stayed away from the AI discussions all of last year. We had the AI battles, and we had Google jump in. Microsoft and OpenAI were leading the charge, and they were taking flack for crazy hallucinations that first came out, and the reporters were talking about. IBM came out with stuff. Adobe, again with Firefly. I mean, everyone kind of put their lot in for AI, and they've taken their lumps with it. It hasn't been perfect. It hasn't been nice. It's been rather messy, and it's still continuing to be an issue as far as deep fakes and issues with potential political interference and whatnot. There's a whole bunch of things going on with it, and Apple stayed famously out of it because they were focused on their Vision Pro, I guess, and making better iPhones or whatnot. But I find it interesting now that we hear news about them scrapping the car initiative and moving everyone over to AI, that they're in a rush to do AI. And they put out this press release saying that our devices are the best consumer laptops for AI, even though we've not invested anything in it. And all they've really done is made a processor that has access to better Wi-Fi. I mean, because all of the features that they're doing were things that Apple had already done before. And the fact that they're saying that they support cloud-based solutions just means that they people have access to Wi-Fi on their devices. I'm gonna keep ranting for a second, but I want you to jump in with your thoughts, Dave. What do you think about the MacBook Air being the best AI device because it supports AI efforts from everybody else?
I'm gonna clean this up a little bit. Um, I think it's a little bit of baloney because when I first read this, I had the moment of laughter. I mentioned it in our chat, about what is Apple doing, and then I thought about it for a minute. Let me cover two things here. I was an Apple user for 10 years, roughly 2000,
Boo!
yeah,
Just kidding.
r-
Just kidding.
roughly 2012, 2013 to roughly 2021 or so. I was an Apple user. I bought into the ecosystem. I still had my Windows devices. Yes, I did. But I bought into the ecosystem. I bought the phone. I bought the laptop. I've even still got the desktop in my office. Um, and over the years, I have seen Apple every time they put a new iPhone out there or put these new M series chips out there. We've got so many cores, neural engine for machine learning, machine learning, machine learning. Where is the machine learning? Now there are, for you photo folks out there, I get it. You snap a photo, Apple does things with this photo, post processing. Android does it too, post processing, and they call that machine learning. I get it. But when I see Apple say, look, this is the best device for machine learning development, you got to prove it to me because when you put that Copilot icon down in the corner like we have for Windows, when they mention Adobe Firefly, now I don't know everything about AI, and Kareem, I'm having a little fun with this. When I open up Adobe Firefly, when I open up Copilot, I don't see a whole lot of resources used on my computer. I'm accessing a service that is in turn accessing a back end to produce what I asked it to do. I'm still not seeing any machine learning to where, hey, we've got a Copilot library for developers, and it's housed on your MacBook. And when you ask it a query, it goes to your MacBook, it uses that neural engine and gives you back the result. Basically, the way I see this, when I read that press release, congratulations, Apple. Your devices can access a web based service to process something with AI. I don't see you
Yeah,
doing a whole lot with AI.
I wrote in my piece that there's a little bit of defense for Apple's claims because they do have a neural processing portion in their SoCs based on the board, and these processes are experience they are designed to do specific things, and they do it well. They do it well in the MacBook. I mean, they do have claims of cleaning up audio and making the cameras a little bit better and things like that. You know, and those are some of the same things that Microsoft is saying that their AI, quote unquote, can do as well. Like if we put a specialized chip on our motherboard, it will give you the Windows Studio Effects stuff. So in their defense, in Apple's defense, they're using some of the similar claims. Now, what my issue was that Apple's distilling AI platforms down to hardware-based processing versus pre-generative large language models, which they don't necessarily have established yet. And to your point, they are piggybacking on the fact that everyone else has invested in their own servers. Like, this is billions of dollars that Microsoft and OpenAI and Google and everybody else has had to put into building servers out that run these large language models that are resource intensive and expensive and potentially probably damaging to the environment itself. But Apple's saying they're trying to have their cake and eat it too, saying, our device, because it has a long battery life and it has some of these certain processors that are dedicated to doing things on device, we could free up space to access everyone else's servers and make it a better device. And I don't see how that will distinguish themselves in the future. And by future, I don't mean like 5-6 years. I mean by like come fall, when Microsoft kicks in all these AI features, how that claim will stand. And this will be less than a year. Their devices are on sale now, I suppose, or will be on shelves in March. So March, April, May, June, July, August, maybe in about 6 months, 7 months at most, these claims would be outdated. And where will Apple be after that? Like, they will have to bake these into their next set of devices. So you're not even this M3 version, but maybe an M4 version of the MacBook Air will be a much better AI device. And I just think Apple should probably stay out of the AI conversation until they have their own large language or small language model that works on device and can do the things that Bard or Gemini now, that Copilot, that Firefly can do, versus saying our device can access those things that other people are investing in. And all these other people have their own platforms and operating systems you can currently use now. Like, why do I need a MacBook to use Firefly? I can use it on my PC. I can use it on a Chromebook. Same thing for Gemini, same thing for Copilot. I can use that on a Chromebook if I needed to, or I can use it on Windows PC, or I can use it on Mac. It doesn't make your device any way particularly better. So that's my rant. I will let people who are Apple fans come back to the pod. I just want to say it'll be interesting to see how these companies compete in the future, especially with Apple kneecapping itself as the privacy king and security first. Everyone should be security first. I get that, but they've done it in such a way that they're going to have to do on device for a lot of this stuff. And as I mentioned a second ago, these things need servers. They need tons of processing power. They need billions of investments from companies who, specialize in cloud distribution of data and and content to bring to push it down and beam it down into these devices so that we can get our answers quickly and accurately from various sources. How is Apple going to jump into these waters? Will they be hypocritical about it, or will they just figure out a way to build it into these chipsets somehow with limited access to specific things? And maybe those specific things that they access are things people use routinely. Maybe those are the things that Microsoft and Google will need to pare down on their own offerings, realizing like, hey, these are the 30, 40 different things that people actually use, and Apple's figured it out and they built it into the devices, and the experience is great. We don't need to have access to the cloud to access all the internet, just some of it. So that's my rant. Thank you guys for coming to my TED Talk. I appreciate it.
I want to add two things
Yeah, of course.
that you touched on there that I think are a little bit important. As I mentioned, I still do have an iMac sitting in my office, and I do like to use Final Cut Pro on occasion to edit videos. That is something that still works very well on any Mac device. And to your point, what I find myself doing is running that mouse down there to the bottom right hand corner, looking for that Copilot button to ask it a question, to generate that thumbnail, to give me some graphic ideas, to give me a YouTube description idea. And it's just not there. And I understand that Apple, my gut is they didn't buy into this AI, the current AI models at first. They didn't buy into the Copilot. They didn't buy into the Gemini. And they're sitting there going, okay, because we know Apple, they're late to the party normally, but when they come to the party, they tend to do things well. So I'm wondering, are they sitting there watching, going, how are users using AI? Are they using AI? And now, when Apple comes with something, Apple usually does a rip and duplicate. I'm going to call it what it is. They usually rip and duplicate off of something else and then offer their version of it. And the Apple fanboys go crazy. So, is Apple done? Are they in trouble? That's debatable. They're behind. And like you mentioned, I don't see this changing by the time the story we just talked about happens in the fall, when our Windows users can go buy that PC that's already got the Copilot button in the keyboard. So we've gone from software to hardware. We've got that button in the keyboard. We have made it directly accessible. We have got our AI engine, in the hardware, and we're seeing work. Now, does Apple come out and say early 2025 we have IAI? I'm just, I'm having a little fun. Everything with them is I. We've got IAI for your Apple MacBook, and here's what it can do. Maybe they do, but it's telling to me that they're relying on others for their AI push. That's not normal for Apple.
No, and to your point, IAI would be cool. It'd be nice. I think it's the Steve Jobs version. I think now under the Tim Cook or Tim Apple version, it is now going to be called the AI Pro. They put Pro. They replaced I with Pro in all of their devices now. So we'll have AI Pro eventually.
And it'll have let me throw one more fun thing. It will have a subscription, folks, and it will be part of your
Definitely.
iCloud Plus.
Man, capitalism at its finest, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to get to our last one. For those of you who are Stadia fans, you might want to sit up for a second, get a little bit of a conversation for you. Yeah, see, look at he's laughing already because he knows where he's going with this. Where's that dead horse at? Bring it back out so you can beat up on it. We're going to be talking about Microsoft pondering the Xbox console future. This is a post I believe went up just a moment ago on our site. And it's an interview that was held by a former Microsoft Xbox executive. I believe his name is Peter Moore, and he's talking to IGN. So if you want to read the full transcript, you can go to IGN. If you want to read a more concise and nuanced take on it, you can go ahead and read David's piece, Microsoft Unboxed. But without further ado, I'll let you get into it. What is going on here?
Well, I think this is something we've been touching on for weeks and even months. Microsoft is having a problem in the Xbox division, first of all, and it's a problem they've got to solve. Sony, love them, hate them, is kicking their behind year after year in sales. And, you know, the Xbox is sold under the idea that the margins are thin at best on the hardware, with the hope that you will buy the software, you will buy into the ecosystem, you will buy the Game Pass, and that's how Xbox makes its money.
Mhm.
But as cloud continues to advance, as we had two stories today on the podcast about GeForce Now, as cloud continues to advance and get better by the week almost, do we need to continue making Xbox consoles? The hardware. Let me be clear. The Xbox platform is going nowhere. I don't want people screaming, hey, David over at Microsoft Unboxed said Xbox was going away. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, do we still need to make the console? Now, I understand and I have stood up for those that don't have decent broadband alternatives. I get that. But that number is getting smaller. And with Microsoft, I'm not going to say they don't care, but they kind of have to look at the bigger picture. They've got the cloud out there. Microsoft was a software company first. Before they ever produced a piece of hardware, they were legendary software. So, does Microsoft need the hardware? Can they just be a software company, just be a game publisher, just be a game marketer? Go back to doing what they do best and let the cloud team do their thing and say, look, make the cloud the best that we possibly can for gamers. We're not going to directly make the Xbox console anymore. Maybe for those that still want it, that can't get broadband or need a console for some reason, they sell their OEM rights to it to HP, to Dell, maybe to a Origin PC, a specific gaming company that eats, drinks, and sleeps gaming all day long. They sell the rights and say, look, you make the hardware for those that want it. And it doesn't hurt that company as bad because they're used to a different set of margins, and they can do it and they can make it work. And Microsoft says, look, we're committed to the cloud. Here's the software. It's going to run on all your devices. Maybe we continue, because they've already started it with some of the upper end Samsung TVs. Maybe we continue to build this directly into your device. All you need is a controller and something to download an app. I know Phil Spencer said in one of his recent presentations, the hardware is here to stay. I get it. You don't want to admit it yet, but I think that admission is coming sooner than later, because Xbox is not going to continue to let Sony beat them up in hardware sales year over year. It's not going to happen. No company is going to do that.
Yeah, to your point, the conversation in the interview was pretty in depth. Moore, who again worked at Microsoft, but I think before that worked at Sega USA.
Yes.
This is back during the time when they had to cut the Dreamcast, so he knows about getting rid of hardware investments. Unfortunately, as sad as they were, because I was a huge Dreamcast fan. But he's also been on successful projects, more blooming things. Uh, I think what the ultimate concept that he's getting at. Again, these are conversations he believes Microsoft is already pondering. So nothing's official. Microsoft hasn't come out and said anything about any of this. But internally speaking, this makes a lot of sense because I think, as we mentioned, uh, they just paid almost $70 billion for Activision Blizzard. Their consoles are, as you mentioned, trailing Sony, which means that they are trailing users. They are half the market. We'll say half, but they're roughly about half the market, given that Sony's the other half, and Nintendo's in there somewhere as well. So, and Nintendo's kind of, I would assume, an overlapping part of the Venn diagram. But um, the fastest way for them to recoup that money is not to sink it into another generation of consoles, followed by another generation of consoles, because that is upfront R&D that they have to basically account for. That's perhaps anywhere between $7 to $12 billion of building out these devices and getting them ready to then resell and then potentially lose another console generation and another batch of users when they have at their disposal probably the best software lineup in the industry. They are the biggest game publisher now thanks to this acquisition. And I think what Moore is saying is that at some point Nadella is going to go to Spencer and say, "Hey, how do we create more games? Because that's going to be the business we're in. That's the business we're in currently. We are the arbiters of the Activision library. How do we continue this? How do we make more Call of Duties? How do we make them faster? And how do we utilize some of the things that are already bought and paid for, such as Azure Cloud, as our partnership with OpenAI and AI to make these games faster, to make more of these games, to make a variety of games, and to do it with less people, because it's a business at the end of the day. Unfortunately, I hate to hear that phrase, with less people, because that is the bane of anybody who's employed. You don't want to hear that, because that means you're going to be let go or potentially in the crosshairs. But this is how investors view things. And when investors say, "Hey, Nadella, how do we get more money?" It's usually when you have less people. That is usually why layoffs are, that is the most costly thing for companies to have humans, unfortunately. So what Nadella's going to do is ask Spencer, how do we do this all with less people? And AI is going to be the future, which is something they already invested in the cloud. You don't have to have people designing hardware or creating these consoles and costing us money. We save ourselves that $10 to $12 billion every 5 to 6 years that we make this. Put that towards the $70 billion tax that we already owe, and start just sending our games out to every platform, not just Xbox, where we're limiting ourselves to half the audience, but to Sony, which is the other half of the audience. And with that being said, I mean, do you see it's hard to see a future where they keep making this console when they can make money on the software, which is, like, to your earlier point, that's what they specialize in. That's what they know how to do. Thanks to the purchase of Activision, they have the distribution channels already set in place. This seems like kind of a no-brainer, unfortunately. And I like playing Xbox. I like the consoles, but and I mentioned at the top of this, you Stadia fans might want to stand up, because the idea that Microsoft just goes ahead now and makes a really nice Xbox controller every year, the Xbox Elite or whatever, with a Bluetooth and NFC and Wi-Fi modules built into it that access games via the cloud, via streaming, or via sticks, or on the PC, or on a TV that has a dedicated processor for streaming games or whatnot. That seems to be a much easier, better future for Microsoft than to build out and continue to partner with AMD to make these expensive bespoke consoles. And I believe Moore also mentions that it's just in the numbers that people are augmenting their gaming experiences. We didn't have smartphones before. We didn't have PCs not everyone had access to a PC or the finances to access a decently working gaming PC. And we didn't have streaming platforms that allow you to stream games or cloud-based gaming. So with all those now accessible, people are kind of I don't know how many people are sitting down to play a 80-hour RPG every night, every every night of every week to play that game. They're just saying, hey, I'll play it for maybe an hour or two, and then I'll hop on my phone. And when I'm standing in line or I'm at an elevator, I'll play Snap or I'll play, Genshin Impact or something like that. I will do that as well. Microsoft wants to be in both those places at the same time, and they can't because they don't have a phone. And the console, they are losing that console war. So what better way to be in both places than to say, hey, we are that game. We're on both those devices. We sell you the game. You bought the game for, maybe 50, $60 and another $2 to play it online. We are that person. We sold you that game. We're in both those experiences. That's where we rest. That's where we live at. That's where we make our money. That's where we make our margins. So I mean, it makes sense that when we're saying it's sad. We don't know if this is going to be the last console generation. They may make one more after this, but I doubt that there will be that going forward. And again, this is also a question that Sony's going to have to deal with at some point as well, because I think they did earnings and underperformed in the last quarter, and they had to let go of 900 people as well. So this isn't like they are, running away with this whole gaming initiative. They will have to make some hard decisions coming up in the near future.
And they're not the only ones. There was also a brief mention in this interview about people are wondering where the Nintendo Switch 2 is, and that could be a hint that everybody is stepping back to make the decision. And I think the only question to ask here, we know Microsoft has the cloud. We have we know that Sony is using Azure for some of their back end services. I don't know what Nintendo is using. I don't know if they're using Azure, Amazon, Google Cloud, or something else. You know, it goes. To me, it makes a full circle. We have talked and talked about the cloud getting more competitive, and I think eventually, if you're not making decisions on your console, now Microsoft's decision as far as cloud, of course, is already made. They have their cloud, but you've got to make the decisions if you're other hardware producers of who do we want for our cloud, what setup do we want, and the cloud is where that money is invested. Now, does Sony stick with the Microsoft partnership, or do they say, "Hey, we're going to move to one of the other providers"? What about Nintendo? That's something to think about. And how does that expense compare to what it takes, as you mentioned, to build a console? I would love to sit down with all three console makers and go, okay, when you decide to make the PlayStation 6, the Xbox Series X2, the Nintendo Switch 2, when somebody says, okay, it's time to move forward, what does that bill look like from the time you say it's time to move forward to the time the shrink wrap box is put on the shelf? That's something I would love to know.
You and me both, my friend, and maybe we'll spend the rest of this weekend thinking about that. We want to thank everybody for joining us for another Microsoft Unboxed Pod. We appreciate you guys coming back after our hiatus being a couple weeks or whatnot. We will be back next week with all things considered. Uh, where can people find you online if they want to talk more about the future of Xbox?
I would love to talk to people about that. This is my jam, and David PAJ 1978. That is on Threads as well as the great Twitter/X platform.
That's great. You can find me at Mindhead1 on X slash Twitter. You can find me at Kareem Anderson on Threads if you want to talk about Apple and their perceived notions of AI, or just the MacBook M3 in general and how that compares to other devices. I'd love to talk about that. Uh, if not, you want to talk about comics or movies or anything like that, also hit me up. I believe that's going to be it, ladies and gentlemen. Get out of here. Go enjoy your weekend. We'll see you next week.
Have a good weekend, everybody. Thanks for joining us.